and welcome to the third and final round of the Rugby Championship.
McDermott got absolutely nailed by Scott Barrett. Across it goes here, Valentini stretching. So it's a try under the post. Smith away for Geordie Barrett. Quick hands. Oh, beautiful. And Jordan stretches and scores. Again, wide it goes for Jordan. Beautiful pass. Mark Talia scores inside the 22. Anton Leonard-Brown. What a run from the All Blacks. Long pass. It's gone for Talia. Back inside. Rico Ioane. What a try that is.
The All Blacks with the perfect start to the season in a Rugby World Cup here. They go 3 from 3.
What does it mean to have the Bledisloe for another year?
Mate, it means everything. And yeah, on to the next.
Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening and welcome to the breakdown. Well, mission complete for the All Blacks for now. The trophies are locked away in the cabinet and they now have the luxury of having a test to spare before they name their Rugby World Cup squad in exactly 1 week's time. We'll be doing a breakdown special next Monday from 5 p.m. as well. Joining us to talk all about the test action from the weekend, Tony Johnson, welcome back to the program. Sukopi Kepu, great to have you joining us again, and Sir John Kerwin. JK, you must be feeling pretty good after this. Good start to the year.
I was thinking about it this morning, actually, TJ. I was thinking, wow, this week is really intriguing, right? Are you prepared to lose a test match to know who we're going to take as from number 23 to 33?
I don't think that needs to be answered, JK. They won't want to lose a test match. I know what you're getting at, and it's a great position to be in, because now they've locked away the Bledisloe, they've locked away the Rugby Championship. What I liked about this was that it was a different kind of test match to what we've been seeing, Sukopi, that they had no sort of command of the scoreboard as such, and they were put under or asked enough questions of their defence by Australia at times, and they kept their composure and their structure on defence, and then that transition from defence into attack. I think that's the big positive to come out of this.
Yeah, I thought they weathered the storm really well in that first 20. You know, the Aussies come out really hard and they spoke about starting fast and strong. And, you know, the All Blacks just weathered that storm, held onto the ball, built those phases. Typical, you know, Joe Smith style. They hang onto the ball, build those phases. And, you know, it came after they ran up, you know, 10 plus phases and scored those tries. So, you know, again, it wasn't the typical All Blacks test match that they play that expansive style, but it was something different.
Sukopi, as someone who's played 100 test matches for the Wallabies, just close your eyes for a moment, because the Bledisloe Cup is back in the trophy cabinet for the 21st straight year. There's nothing quite like having it in the middle of the dressing room, is there, JK? Full to the brim with beer. We're still unsure about how many it takes, but they've all had a go. The newbies are front and centre.
Unfortunately, I was probably the last one to lose it.
How do you lose something that size?
Yeah, I've lost it. Not the trophy, the game. Yeah, we did actually lose the lid, but we won't go into that. But I think over the last 20 odd years, it has turned into something incredibly special. Way more shared in my era. And I think the Australian side went through that beautiful period probably when professionalism started. But we want it to be more competitive. We're going to have to change it a wee bit and make it 3 test series or something, because having it for 21 years is fantastic and we want to keep it. But from a competition point of view, you know, I'd like to see it possibly go back to 3 tests.
Yeah, I think behind that sort of niggly exterior that we saw from Eddie last week, I think deep down he really would have loved in World Cup year to get that Bledisloe back. At least give themselves a chance to go to Dunedin to win it back, because I think that's like a 2-shot swing in golf. Someone's eagling, someone's bogeying, something like that. It would have been a huge boost to Australia, and as he suggested, I don't know whether the New Zealand economy would have got any worse than what it already is, but you know, you can see what he's getting at there. I actually think that test match was a pretty important one for both teams. I suppose the question is now is what happens, as you rightly say, JK, what do the All Blacks do with this remaining game? But also, where does that leave Eddie in terms of his preparation?
Yeah, I think he banked on it a lot and he spoke about it. You know, he spoke about Dunedin, he spoke about MCG, and I think the build-up to that was quite massive. And I guess it's just a little hiccup in his preparation with the team, and I'm sure he'll look to keep those combinations on this week. I thought Carter Gordon did really well, and I think he'll just look to build the chemistry within the combinations he's got and keep working on that towards the World Cup.
I don't think he's got a choice, to be fair. He'll know enough now. Like, he's one of the hardest workers in the game. He would have looked at all the guys that he's dropped. He would have looked at all the players. He would have looked at every rugby league player, you know. But I think he's got to settle on a side. We talked about combinations. Yeah. You know, I really like the Barrett-Ioane combination. I think they're starting to really gel. But we don't know any combinations in the Australian side. So he's got to go, this is my best side, barring injuries, and I'm going to play it now all the way through.
Just getting back to your original question, and I think it's a pertinent point because he's got to name a World Cup team. I'm talking about Ian Foster here. So how much tinkering does he do? I'm not sure that he'll want to do too much. I think he'll want to do enough to give some people who haven't had a lot of action just to have a look at them. But I think he's got a bit of momentum here and he'll want to keep that going.
I think you have to.
33?
I think you have to. Sorry, Kirsty, but I think you have to. Like, mission accomplished. There are problems. So for Aonuku, Caleb Clark, is Aonuku going to be covering centre? You know, who's the other loose forward? You know, what are we going to do with the back three? I just think you've got to go, here's a group opportunity. We're going to get out there. And the Australian side, I believe, for periods last night, Eddie will be happy. First 20, second 15, second half, first 15 minutes. But now's the opportunity for the country to go, okay, Fozzie, if you want to take some risk and change 5 or 6 because we want to know who's going to the World Cup, go for it.
Does he know his World Cup 33?
I think he'd be getting closer to it. I think now he has a really good idea about what is best, probably even 23. I'd say he's getting close to that. Yeah. And it's just a matter of he's got a few sort of like 5 into 4 or 4 into 3 situations that won't go that he's got to sort of. It's not a bad place to be in though, is it?
Well, it's not a bad headache to have, isn't it? Like, I think versatility is going to be a big part of it as well. Like, guys that can cover a couple of positions is usually pretty key in World Cup years, and whether you take 3 halfbacks and 3 hookers or 2 or 3, some coaches have run the risk of taking 2.
You talked about halfbacks. Cam Roigard joined the All Blacks club last night. JK, did you see enough from him in the 20 minutes that he got?
I saw a calmness for a young man in that position. I saw a confidence in the way he plays. So what I didn't want to see was rushing, frenetic and running around. So he showed maturity for his age. And what I did want to see was him being the extra loose forward, because I think we have a beautiful mix when we have that. TJ Perenara's obviously been injured, hasn't been able to get in. But you think about how many times he's come on in big games, TJ, and just been that extra loose forward, been a bit more aggressive. And I saw that from him last night. So I think he's ticked the box, because then we've got variation. Got 2 very similar players and him who can bring something different.
And a really, really good left boot, which he showed. And how good is it to have that versatility, that extra weapon, that ingredient that he brings? I'm
quite biased because he's a counties man. So,
Onifero,
Onifero man. Look, he's a great young man, and we always knew that he was going to, get there at some stage. And congrats to him last night. Well deserved. And like JK said, he's just calm when he needs to run. He knows when to run and just deliver. And I'm sure he had, the experienced guys around him to make it easier.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really liked about this performance, was the composure. As I say, Australia, they couldn't quite sustain it, but there were times where they were getting plenty of ball and they were asking questions, but the All Blacks kept their shape, kept their composure, kept their discipline, which is hard to do when, penalties, often come into it. And I think he probably, coming into that environment's been really good. But Roigard, he just slotted right in there.
I think it's a good point, TJ, because what I'm seeing, what I think all of us saw in the last couple of years, and Fozzie's been really open about the disruption, but we saw a sort of lack of clarity under pressure a few years ago, 2 years ago, last year. Whereas now they seem really confident in the structures, they're prepared to wait. Whereas in the past, maybe last year, they'd try and do something, try and create something, whereas there seems to be this patience about them, this confidence, this real confidence in the moves that they're doing, but also the people around them, so important.
Can we sit back and appreciate what Scott Barrett seems to be doing right now at the ripe old age of 29? He is outplaying and outshining arguably the two greatest locks of all time right now, TJ, and has done all season.
I agree, all season, because I think consistently outstanding for the Crusaders. He has actually taken on the mantle. What he's done is that he's knocked a couple of edges off his game. He still has the aggression, he still has the power, he's moving bodies, he's carrying effectively, the skill set is all there, but he's not giving away penalties. Remember, he did cop a couple of red cards early on in his career. He has become perhaps, you know, one of the lead figure in this All Black pack at the moment.
So how do you work the pack around him? What happens with the other two leading figures, the Retallicks and the Whitelocks?
I don't think we should say that Sam Lightlock is an impact player. No. I think that, I think it was Graham Henry that invented it, you know, the whole 23. I just think you go, one of them's going to come off the bench, and at this stage, Scott's in the best form. He's showing the work rate, his work rate is incredible. So he is the perfect lock that's getting in, doing your work. He can carry, he can support, he'll do all that. So, you know, I don't think, everyone likes to be in the starting 15, but Copper, you know it nowadays, you know, just important the people that are coming on and finishing the game. I mean, Sam came on last night and worked incredibly well. Didn't miss a beat. They didn't bring Barrett off, they brought Retallick off. So maybe the comparison is, well, who are the big men? Because Scott's not as big, line-out wise. But if you got Frizzell and a few others, it doesn't matter.
And they're just sharing the load. I mean, he's just, you know, Sam Whitelock's coming back from injury. And who knows, you know, that's a good problem for Fozzie to have. And, I mean, not forgetting that he's one of the Barrett brothers. You know, he's a mix between Geordie and Bowden at the back. He's wiry, and his brother's running hard and fast through the middle. And you've got his brother as a lock, so some good genes there. And
I think Sam Whitelock remains an integral, very central figure in this whole All Black thing, because he is a bit of a line-out dissector. He's a bit of a scientist in that regard. And I just think they're in a great position where they've got three guys they can rotate, share the workload. Let's not forget, they've also got, well, they've got a decision to make, haven't they? Because they've got to make a decision between Tupuvai and Josh Lord,
and
probably.
And is Patrick Tuipulotu even in the mix?
Tuipulotu possibly as well.
Wow. So what happens with the locking stocks in 7 days' time? Who makes it and who doesn't? Because that's the conversation
who plays
that they're
next
having,
week?
right?
Yeah. Who plays next week?
Well, Lord and Bailey.
You know, we know Barrett. We know Barrett's going to be amazing. Do we rest him? And do we put an experienced out there with Tupuvai?
Well, the two young guys played against Argentina and did a pretty good job, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good problems, like you said. I don't think Eddie is having the same problems, right?
Well, I mean, we look at again, we go back to the Springboks. You know, you look at their bench, you look at their lock stocks, you look at the last World Cup. Their bench was stacked, experienced. Guys have been there, and so that you don't lose much when they come on. And I think it's in the finishes that you win the Test matches. You look at the 2015 All Blacks team there. You know, the guys that came on, they were the guys that finished the game. So, unfortunately, I was on the receiving end of that. But
Sonny Bill at half time, I remember.
You know, again, it's the experience and the guys that you bring off the bench that you don't lose much, and they actually add to the game.
Well, for our Musashi Power Play this week, we're going to look at the finishing part of the match for the All Blacks. One of the great team tries, Rieko Ioane just happened to be the man who touched down JK, but everyone touched the ball. What was it that you saw in this about the All Blacks attack?
First thing is where they're attacking from. So they're attacking from inside their 22, which was seen for the whole lot, but also the movement off the ball. You've got guys cutting, holding up the defence, and then just the support play. As you can see, the guys in support just really tracking in behind the ball carrier. And the other thing that really impressed me was not going for the miracle ball. Would have been really easy for Anton Leonard-Brown to go, I'll try and get an offload. Even with a mistake here, and we spoke about Mark Talia's feet. I mean, look at this. You know, he's marking a world-class winger there, and he's just got that acceleration. But then everyone's in motion, you know, and often you talk about, when you talk to rugby players, they say we've got to be in motion. And that means that when you look up and the defence is coming, you've got this whole swarm of people. You've got the ball carrier, you've got people all over the place. And that's what I loved about that try, particularly the work rate inside your 22, everyone chasing, but everyone working out. There was no one fat tracking it. They're all going towards the ball carrier. So when you see the ball carrier, there's 4 or 5 guys behind them. That takes a lot of effort. And then they spread out really quickly again, and that late in the game is not easy.
TJ, there's been a lot of credit about the All Blacks pack and how far they've come in 12 months, but how much has this All Blacks attack come in 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a classic. That almost goes back to the Wayne Smith era, wasn't it? Because that was one of his fortes, was this transition from a hard-out defence and how quickly you can respond to the opportunity to break out, turn it into attack. And to me, that's actually been really a cornerstone of the game. I just like the fact that they've made some subtle changes to their attack structure. I've got no doubt about that. They've mixed things up a bit. I think we've seen subtle variations. Some of the little loop-around movements that we saw in a couple of the earlier tests, they're sucking in defenders and they're creating space for the guys out wide. And when they get the ball, they're devastating. So I just think, just get the feeling that over the off-season, there's a lot of thought, and you know what Joe Smith's like. He's a real scientist. Jason Ryan and with Ian Foster, they've just worked at rounding out and giving themselves a more complete game rather than relying on one certain style.
You talked about devastating, impossible to defend as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, how hard was that for the Wallabies in that back end last night?
Yeah, I mean, the first half, as we saw the stats, 150-odd tackles in the first half, and it was just relentless. The All Blacks just kept coming in. It showed in the end there, the scoreline blowing out a little bit, and it taxes you, by at the end of the day, and that's what they've brought in again in their attack. They can hold on to the ball, they can build that pressure, and they can go around you when they need to.
Will Jordan, Mark Talia linking up. It's a beautiful thing to see right now, JK. Let's talk about the back three. Does anyone else have a chance to break into the starting back three right now, or is that set? Will Jordan, Mark Talia and Beauden Barrett?
Oh, when they're playing like that, I mean, Will Jordan last week and then, Mark Talia. So it's, for me, pretty hard to change. I think we're not talking about Beauden anymore. We're talking about, we're talking about him just being the fullback. But we need to see Nuku. I know he's been injured. Narera, I mean, apparently he's got a little bit of a niggle injury. So I think Damian McKenzie goes, but I think it's probably between those two and possibly Caleb. That's why I'm saying, TJ, and I'll keep saying it all night, are we going to actually play some of these guys? Apparently Leicester's had a little bit of a calf injury, had a great super season, leaving our shores, which is unfortunate. But if you think about it, Caleb's have an opportunity. The other two wingers have had an opportunity. At least one of them needs to be out there this week. So you can go, well, I've had a fair crack at trying to make it.
Did you like Caleb off the bench last night? Who would be your best bench option?
Look, I thought it was, and sometimes I overthink stuff, so I actually thought it was a strange person to have on the bench, and maybe no one else is available, just because, like Sir Kepe said, covering different positions. So for me, that was interesting, but I don't expect to see him this week. I think he's done everything he can to be selected. He got out there last night, did really well. He's a different body type. He's big, he's strong. So I think, yep, you've done everything you can, son, but then who's going to be out there next week in that group of outside backs? Forget Damian McKenzie, he's going.
Is he part of the 23 though, Damian McKenzie? Is he part of that conversation?
I think he will be.
But it's a World Cup, and you've actually got to negotiate a whole pool, and so there are going to be games where they'll field a team that's not that close to their top strength. They have to be able to do that. They have to know that, for a pool match, that you've got guys who can come in and take those positions. So it's not just, we love to talk about who the best three are, but really they're looking at who the best 5 or 6 are for the tournament.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, Sean Stevenson, we haven't spoken about much. Does he come into the picture, or does he, is he left behind? So Narawa, he's another great finisher, so sport for options there.
In Narawa, he's got a back injury at the moment, and Leicester calf, but we're hearing Leicester should be good to come back this weekend.
Yeah, and he could do with the game. I think he really needs it. I wouldn't mind seeing Sean Stevenson having a crack either, because if someone does get injured, he might be one of the first cabs off the rank. And we haven't, of course, seen Dallas McLeod. It's fascinating.
I think with Sean, the interesting thing and the best thing for him is he'll be in front of the coaches every day. I think there was the discussion about his defence, right? That's what I sort of heard they were worried about. So he gets into the All Black teams. He's playing well. He goes and plays for the Bees, plays exceptionally well, has another good season. And if he's working on that and he's in front of their eyes and they've got confidence that he's getting better at the stuff they want him to get better at, and this will be every player, they'll be talking to every player about this, then you've got to see him.
Yeah.
Off the bench or start him. You've got to see him, otherwise he stays home.
And I think from what I'm hearing, he's done well enough in this group for him to actually keep him in the mix, because remember, he was only there temporarily and they've kept him in the mix as well. So, you know, he's the sort of guy. I tell you what people will be happy about was the fact that Will Jordan had a bit of a run at fullback. That was an interesting one, taking Bodie off, giving Will Jordan a run at fullback where people feel is his best position. I don't care where he plays. To me, it doesn't matter what number he's got. Yeah. You give him a licence to pop up here, there and everywhere, he'll do the job. I'm
going to have to come back to that, TJ, because I get a little bit nervous because I think Ben Smith should have been fullback in 2019. Anyway, that's another discussion.
You can come back to that one, JK, but it was a wonderful occasion last night at the MCG. 83,000 people turned up to watch that Bledisloe Cup match, and Jeff and Mills were there.
Mills, yes, it's locked away once again. The fact the All Blacks have had to work hard for it. Wallabies didn't do themselves any favours though, did they? When you're playing against the All Blacks down to 14 men for 20 minutes, it's going to be difficult to come over top of them.
Yeah, I think that was a big period, wasn't it? Losing Alatoa and then, you know, Tani Alatupo, you know, going through that injury. That part there when they didn't get points, it's, you know, particularly when they were down in the All Blacks sort of half, you know, they kind of stunned them a little bit coming out of the break. They needed to capitalise on that, and once the All Blacks just got a little bit of an opportunity and they had one man down, that was it, you know, and that they just took off from there. They had the comfort of the scoreboard and then they just rose to another level.
Are we feeling pretty comfortable where we're at right now in terms of the way that we're playing? We face some adversity, different style of game. Look, we know the Wallabies aren't at the peak of their powers right now, but I'm extremely confident the fact that the direction that we're heading. Yes, 7 days. I'm imagining we'll see a bit of a different team now, possibly for the second Bledisloe. Yeah, are you available?
I'm definitely not available, mate.
I'm not either.
Yeah, but I think you possibly could. You know, guys getting an opportunity. I like what we've seen. These last 3 test matches have shown us the All Blacks have been able to win in different ways. Tonight, you know, it was a battle a little bit in that first 20-odd minutes. The Wallabies had to make a lot of tackles, but they had to grind it out a little bit. And so I like that. There's signs here of the All Blacks can actually win under a little bit of pressure. There's a bit in that Springboks game where you've seen, you know, had to, you know, go through a little bit of adversity as well. So I'm feeling pretty confident. They're in good nick.
One more test for some players to force their way into a Rugby World Cup squad. It's Dunedin next week. I can't wait now. I can't wait to see where this All Black team goes to in 7 days.
Who is going to pull on the jersey in 7 days' time? That is the biggest question. Now that they've got the trophies locked away, JK, you said, is this a free hit? Do you mind losing that match to look at the bigger picture for the All Blacks? I mean, what are the positions potentially still up for grabs? A loose forward spot, midfield, maybe a prop with Newell and Moody coming back in?
I'm being a bit provocative just because we don't lose. We don't like losing. We don't like the All Blacks losing. So I'm being provocative. But what I'm really trying to say is, you know, I don't think we go out there to lose. But if you've got to play 5 or 6 guys because we need to see them for the World Cup, that's something that I'd go, OK, right? I still think the breadth of the squad can still be incredibly competitive, although I think Australia are getting better, right? They're going to come here with their best side, no doubt. But there's Sean Stevens, who I spoke about, Jacobson, you know. I keep hearing that you know, Blackadder is still in the mix, but he hasn't played. So what happens there? Do you play Jacobson? Do you start him and go, OK? Because they're the big decisions. Some of the guys that are still on the fringes that are still a little bit injured. And so these guys need to give a good chance to put their hand up.
I guess a lot of it depends on how nailed down their selection is for the World Cup. They will probably, you'd have to think, have most of the names penned in now, who they want to go. There's 33 to go away. And let's not forget that even if these guys don't get a game this week, they can go back, they can play a bit of NPC, and there is the game at Twickenham against the Springboks as well, and I think that'll be, you'll probably see about 30 players each side playing in that game.
I agree, TJ, but I'm actually talking, I think he's penned in 29.
Yeah. I'm still inclined
so maybe 4 changes this week.
Yeah, I'm still inclined, make some changes, but I think they'll want to keep the momentum going. I think they'll want to keep winning. I don't know what.
I don't think he'll make mass changes. Yeah. I think he'll tinker with a few. I mean, he might bring in Dubovati and give Barrett a rest, maybe. I'm not sure. Ben Finau is someone I'd love to see get in there, and he's been in the squad, and so, yeah, I mean, sport for choices.
Yeah, they've used 31 players so far, and that's. Some people might think, God, that's actually quite a lot. And some of them they've kind of just used briefly or off the bench, or, as I say, we're talking about the 2 young locks starting the game in Argentina. So 31 out of, what have they got, 36? You know, that's not a bad workload share that they've employed. As I say, to me, it might just come down to a couple of guys needing a game before they can be absolutely certain that they're set to go. So it's going to be interesting to see which...
It's normally an outside back, a midfielder, depending on... I come back to Leicester for Aonuku, because if he plays, do they take him as a centre cover, and a loose forward. So that's what I'm thinking. I think it's in those positions, and then in this case, which you've mentioned, Sekope as a lock, you know?
Yeah.
Do you take Lord? Do you take...
Tupou.
Tupou?
Yeah.
So the other decisions, hard ones.
You talked about those 2 positions and the 2 that haven't played so far, Sammy Penifina, who you mentioned, and Dallas McLeod also. We don't know how Sam Cane is. Are you going to put him back out there? I mean, did we miss the captain last night?
Oh, I think aspects of it they did. They weren't quite as relentlessly physical in this test. I mean, they still did well enough, and I think they probably did miss Sam Cane's... Dalton Papali'i is not quite the same style of player, and maybe they did miss his physical presence in place. I think if he's fit, they'll want to give him another game. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much on the flight, unless he's got an injury, and I think Fozzie's... That's his captain. That's his right-hand man, and I think he deserves to go. And you can see what he does off the, away from the pretty stuff that people don't watch much. But he was missed out there.
Yeah.
Potentially a final home game in Dunedin for their hero Aaron Smith as well. Surely he gets the fairy tale finish at Forsyth Bar. But one thing that you noticed, JK, last night, when the All Blacks held the ball, they majority went down the blind side, and you saw Joe Schmidt's influence all over this attack.
Yeah, I think, Fozzie's been talking about it, changing it up a wee bit. I think the thing I liked about it was the late decision to go down the blind side. So if you just have a look here, what's happening is they're facing in the open side, and then very late they go to the blind side. You've also got options on the inside and on the outside, and you get that by moving late. So you see an inside pass there. Everyone is then reloading. When we used to watch Ireland a few years ago, they used to do what I called the hammer, which was right side, left side, and then go wide. Once again, if you watch this, the 3 players, and their formation is really good as well. They go to the blind side, they've got that shallow V, which means the ball goes to the middle, and you've got an inside and an outside option. What does that do to the defence? The defence has got to react very quickly, and if you're tired and made 150 tackles, sometimes you can't get around there quick enough, or you miss a couple of those tackles. So I think that what we spoke about before with that counter-attack, and then the good old pick and go, which the All Blacks always love doing. Always good to see a winger do a pick and go and score a try, which never happened in my day. But the thing I like about what's happening is setting in a formation, then changing it very late, which means the defence has got to work hard, get around the corner. The options coming to the middle guy and having an inside and outside option. And you add that to the long try they scored with guys in motion. And when I say in motion, you're getting behind the ball carrier and giving them multiple options. I think their attack is really starting to look good. And it's hard on defence, isn't it? Especially if you have made 150 tackles and you're in the front row and you just push 3 scrums and you've got to move from open side to blind side. It's hard.
Well, it is. And I mean, the general rule of thumb is you have 3 in the 15, and then you've got Richie Mo'unga that, coming out around that corner late, and it creates a 4-on-3. Then the halfbacks making decisions. You've got big bodies like Scott Barrett carrying down that channel. You're going to get a bend. And then the guys from that previous ruck just have to backtrack in defence. And then they just feel like you're just in this world of hurt, just going backwards. So credit to them, they did really well.
I think the key to it is Mo'unga, his speed, the way he's able, and Damien McKenzie does it as well. Sometimes you wonder when you watch the Chiefs play, does everyone else know that he's going to do that? I don't know. But with Richie, that dart from one side to the other, and that sweeping movement must be hellishly hard to react to.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's exactly what they do. And he's just glides, and it shows in the Irish test in the past. You know, they go one direction, then they come back the other direction with guys just lined up in a line behind each other. And for a defence, you don't know who you've got because they come out late.
And what happens once you start breaking down a system? Because attack is to break down a defensive system. Right, and once it starts getting broken down, sometimes you see the floodgates open because guys are trying to rearrange. That's why, you know, the All Blacks a few years ago brought in the kicking game, you know, that kick, because all of a sudden you're trying to break down those patterns. But once it breaks, once it bends, sometimes they can really cut loose, which is good.
And I think one of the other things, and again, we're talking about the influence of Joe Schmidt, is the ability to score tries after multiple phases. I mean, a lot of teams around the world now, they'll go a few phases. If nothing's happening, they'll just boot it away. And we know that the All Blacks, and I know the Crusaders always like to score, sometimes strike off the first phase. But what we saw in the test in Melbourne was about 20 of the All Black points accounted for came from 5+ phase situations, so that the patience to keep building and wait for that moment to strike, I think that's been a development in the way they've just these, as I say, little subtle changes that they've made to their attack.
The influence of Joe Schmidt. How lucky are we to have such a world-class player back in New Zealand, coach, I should say. Stay with us here on The Breakdown. Still plenty more to come. We talk about the Wallabies, what next for them, that dramatic finish in Johannesburg as well. But first, the shocking try from Shannon Frizzell in 3 different voices.
Short line out, Parecki. Delivered quickly. Oh, McDermott got nailed. Absolutely nailed by Scott Barrett. And the All Blacks are in.
Instant response from the All Blacks to put the Wallabies under a bit of pressure. And a big hit has ended. And the All Blacks scoring a try through Scott Barrett. We're going to have to need to see the replay here. Oh boy, oh boy. Oh, wow. Oh, it's brutal.
Off waits for another carry, but he's skipped Billy LaRue, and it's a bit tramping all over his would-be defender. As both centres involved in driving this South African ball forward, and they have the try. And now the interception from de Klerk with Libbok away to his right. Is Marty Libbok on the way to his first test try? He certainly is. Into the double figures in phases. Popped up for Carreras by Moroni, and Mateo Carreras has a 3rd test try. Vetranu, a little show of the ball and over. And you'd say nothing less than they've deserved from this second half. It's going to be just a little too late.
No mai, hoki mai, welcome back into The Breakdown. Well, a 1-point win for the Springboks over Argentina, but that is all they needed to secure a 2nd spot on the Rugby Championship. The All Blacks took it out. Not often that they do that in a Rugby World Cup year. In fact, it has been a very, very long time. And the Wallabies, they have gone winless through the first 3 rounds of the season. 0-3 doesn't look pretty if you look at the Rugby Championship table, but inside this team, Sekope, how much did they learn over the last 3 weeks about combinations, about players, about where they're at and what's their best team?
Yeah, I think last night was probably their best team, and I think that combination of McDermott and Carter Gordon is something they want to look forward to building together for the future. And yeah, they'll be hurting, but I think they'll take a lot of positives out of last night. That direct, keeping the ball, holding the ball is probably the most important thing, and they showed that they can match it physically. You know, their locks were great, Will and those guys, but I think having Alan get hurt last night was a big blow for them, and he's a pretty inspirational guy in the middle there.
We saw him in a moon boot after the match. It's not what you want to see at any time, let alone in a Rugby World Cup year. I mean, what are his chances to actually make it through and play in this? Yeah, look, pretty slim, I think. You know, a moon boot in a game. You know, I've done my Achilles as well, and you know, it's a pretty hard road to come back from. But yeah, I did text him and sort of messaged him last night and said, I wish you well and I hope you get back in there. But yeah, again, you know, these are critical times, and you've got to be fit and well for the World Cup. It's a big spot to fill as well.
Well, look, when I look at and I've got the team from last night, I thought Jordan Petaia needs to mature a wee bit. There was a couple of decisions he made during the game but they've got injuries there. You know, we've been talking for the last 20 minutes about our depth and leaving guys at home. The trouble, I believe, is, you know, Alan Alelatoa is a big loss. And now, you know, the Tongan Thor goes on and he gets injured. So now we've got, okay, you know, who's coming? You know, so it's, you need depth to go to the World Cup. I think Eddie will be happy. I think the Australian side is heading in the right direction. We see some signs of improvement, according to Eddie, but their depth will be a problem.
Yeah, did they show enough in the 20 minutes, in the first 20 minutes, TJ, to in 6 to 8 weeks be really competitive at the business end of the tournament? Because everyone's been ruling them out over the last couple of years, right? Change of players, change of coaches. If we're being honest, people haven't been talking about Australia as part of the top tier group.
Well, yeah, they're certainly talking about him in the UK. There's some quite sort of vitriolic stuff being fired his way just in the last, you know, since that match last night. Look, the problem with Eddie, he's operating on a limited time frame because he's got to come in and he wants to change structures, probably change personnel, style of play, all those things. And in the process, when I looked at that team, I thought, yep, this is the best team he can put on the park. The problem he's got at the moment is that you know, if that team plays to the best of their ability, then look out, they'll be a match. But he's trying to bed in a new combination at 9 and 10, not particularly experienced at this level. You know, Gordon to me looks like a real player for the future, but again, limited time frame. Samu Kerevi's an interesting one, Sekope, because, you know, you go back 2019 when he was blasting through defences, he made the Wallabies look such a threatening team. And I'm just not sure, and I don't know why, but I'm not quite sure that he's found that again. You know, do you keep with him in the hope that you rediscover that form that made him such a lethal player?
I think they'll persevere with him. He's obviously finding his feet back. He's just come back from a major injury as well. So, you know, it's just a matter of if Ikitau's going to be back in time, you know, as a centre partnering, or do they invest in Parise or Pataya? So, again, it's trying to find the right guys for that position and mature guys that can work together and you know,
well, I also think they lacked leadership last night in the second half. You've got a mature head out there. They got 3 penalties within kicking range. You kick them and you stay in touch. The Argentinians did all the time. That's why they got to just about win the game last night. So kicking to the corner, I thought last night, no, we're a team that needs confidence, and you know that's just young guys who are out there trying to learn it. But 3 points, 6, you know, it was 17-7, I think, wasn't it, or 19-9?
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? You're talking about, you know, going for the corner as being a bold move when really they should have had the confidence to just keep chipping away rather than rolling the dice on the line. And that's the thing. And I think they've been working on it for a while, but the All Blacks under Jason Ryan's tutelage simply refused to give up tries to driving mauls. And it became a bit of a fruitless quest in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, the vault, they call it, I think it was, down at the Crusaders. And look, last night, you know, the Wallabies had a couple of cracks, couldn't get it. And I totally agree. I think chipping away with the 3 points, come away with 6, 9 points at 17-9, you know, you're still within range. So they'll learn from that. And you know, they're still young. I mean, Carter Gordon, third test in. I'm sure they're working their way through it.
And the other thing, you go back to 2015, Sekope, you remember, because Czech came in pretty late in the piece.
Yes.
And you guys didn't do too badly then, made the final.
Well, come through the final, he brought on the spring tour, and we had 6 months to get it together, and we did pretty well there. And anything can be done, and of course Eddie can orchestrate anything.
So Eddie seems to be, I think, you know, when Eddie comes in, probably quite a lot changes.
Yeah, well, and I speak to a few of the boys in camp, and they're very happy. So he's obviously brewing something in there that they're really they're buying into, and they trust in him, and that's, you know, I'm sure we'll see that sort of come to fruition at some stage. Yeah,
you'd be foolish to take them lightly. You'd be foolish to write them off from the World Cup. And as we know in the past, to our own bitter experience, be it when he was with either Australia or with England or what he did with Japan, Eddie is a master strategist in like a knockout, one-off situation. He can come up with something to unstitch any team. So point blank, just all three of you truly believe the Wallabies can win the World Cup this year?
No.
I think they're in for a chance if they get it right.
Yeah, I'm not saying win it. but I think because of the draw they've got, I think they've got a very good chance to go deep.
I think we're going to win it.
Is that sitting on the fence?
Yeah, it was.
I think our biggest threats. I'm talking about Australia getting through the pool, and actually getting to the quarterfinals.
Oh, they'll do that.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, Fiji aren't too bad, and Wales, you know, Gats is no slug either, so that's going to be a really interesting pool. But it's lighter than the other side, so they get to the quarterfinals. You know, they can get to the semi-finals, but I don't think they've got the depth to go all the way like you guys had the depth.
If you think that things are a bit messy with Australia, mate, just compare it to Wales. That's a bit of a dog's breakfast.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Well, we're going to stick with the Southern Hemisphere at the moment and head across to Johannesburg. Unfortunately, this match was marred by a horrific incident in the opening minute. If you haven't seen it, this is a warning. It is a little bit graphic. It is a horrific incident. Juan Malia on Grant Williams, JK.
Yeah, and I'm really, really annoyed about this, and I'm shouting out to Sir Bill Beaumont, Uncle Bill, and I think Joel Hughes is the referee. I'm going to go back to my stick figures, right? So the trouble is with this, NRL a few years ago said, leave the kicker alone, right? So this is not how you charge down a kick. Can you see that at home? You should be diving at the ball like this figure here. So it's the second time this has happened. When you jump in the air like that and you turn your body and your hip hits someone's head, they're going to be knocked out. And so why can't we just, in the TMO, nothing was done about that. That's incredible. So the trouble all my rugby mates have got, they keep saying to me, where's the consistency? So our trouble is we don't want the World Cup to actually be decided on a mistake. So if I talk about that, when you charge down a kick like that, you should be diving at the person's legs, not jumping in the air and turning your hips, right? Now there was another one that actually was really, really bad, but it's exactly the same. I think we've got it here. Ireland, watch this. Same thing. I think it was CJ Standard, jumps in the air. No, but look at the technique. He's jumped in the air, he's turned his hips. I mean, you know, if he's diving at his foot to try and charge it down, I get it. So we either stop, you're not allowed to charge down if we're worrying about players, okay? Now, I'll get back to my other stick figure, right? So here I go again, because once again we're looking at tackles, and there was one last night, Valentini did, right? So look at this. This is okay. This is fine, because your body is bent, right? The second image, you're going to hit a head, and you've seen Tupou do that, right? Here, actually, I think it's a yellow because he hits his head, but it's actually, he's going as low as he can. He's done this first one, right? Whereas Tupou got yellow carded because he was this guy here, right? So when we go to the TMO, why can't you look at it technically? Why can't you look at it technically? So anyone who jumps in there and twists their hip, you're gone.
I think the crazy thing about this, and consistency is the word. I called the game between the Japan game a week or so ago when Michael Leach was sent off for something where there was absolutely no malicious intent at all. There was no injury that resulted from it at all, and yet he got a red card.
No, but it was this. I think it's yellow. So last night, Valentini did the same. No intent, tried to get as low as he could. But the trouble is with Michael, and I watched it 4 times, he was too high. So he was aiming. So I actually.
So you think Michael Leach was a red card?
No, he's yellow. Totally yellow, not red. Because no intent, so I didn't get injured. But when you look at that, his head, like, you're only going to hit the shoulders and head when you don't get your body down. Right?
What's happening at training?
Well, what's happening at training is you're getting guys to chop and you're getting guys to go at the ball, you know. And unfortunately, at times, you've got guys carrying, you know, at that height, leading with the head. And what you're trying to do is you take the legs out. But I totally agree with JK here. Like, a guy knocked out cold, you know, jumping with your hips towards him is I think they should have reviewed that and gone back to it and had another look at it, because that sort of... Going into a World Cup final, you get your best 9 knocked out. That's your best 9, right? And I don't think Pat Lambie recovered from that.
No, you know? I don't think, like TJ, I don't think there used to be intent in my day, but there's no intent anymore. These guys, I mean, the thing that the players are saying to me is sometimes, JK, it's moving so fast. Someone moves in the last minute, right? And you can't avoid it. It's a head clash, right? And I get that. But unless we're going to start measuring this stuff by the technique that is part of the rules, we're going to keep, it's going to be someone's decision.
Yeah.
The dip and...
Well, I distinctly remember Caleb Clark getting sent off a couple of seasons ago for something exactly like that. To me, what Malia did was utterly reckless and dangerous, and we saw the consequence of it. I'm just staggered. And please, are we going to have another World Cup that's marred by these sort of inconsistent...
This is my problem. We're adding too many laws. So what I'm saying is, what the NRL do, and they do it great, is they go, OK, we're just going to leave the kicker alone. So we're just going to have charge downs in our game anymore. Because we're getting 3 guys knocked out a year and 4 guys sent off. You either dive at the legs or you're not allowed to jump in the air. Yeah. It's pretty easy. So just make some decent decisions and then go to the technique. Michael Leach, yellow card, but not red.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we had that succession of red cards for challenges in the air, and that seemed to fix things. You know, where guys, now we're seeing less of those awful aerial collisions when someone's going up for a high ball. So the message got through, but what sort of message gets through when a guy gets away with that? Well,
the law was let him get to the ground. So you can do this very quickly if you want to.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for Grant Williams and for his family that had to see a horrific incident like that. We do hope that he is okay. Do not go anywhere. I promise you that it will be worth sticking around. These guys are going to talk NPC next, which means provincial allegiances and colours may come out. Well, it's time to check the schedule, find out who your team is playing in the opening round, whether they've got a Ranfurly Shield coming up this season, challenge, I should say. Wellington, of course, defending champions in the NPC and Ranfurly Shield holders too. 5 days away, JK. Auckland, they're going to have a few really, really strong players in this team. Patrick Tuipulotu's in there at the moment. Angus Tartavel's back from injury. And Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has been playing fullback, the position everyone's wanted to see him at.
Yeah, like, I think that next weekend there might be a few other players. So the next couple of weeks before the All Blacks take off, you might see some interesting stuff. And yeah, I mean, I thought they would have released Roger already to go back to the Warriors.
They're doing good enough, JK.
Yeah, I know they are doing great. But, you know, I think him at fullback would be exciting. I think Patrick will still be hoping to get a bit of a sniff for the World Cup, and he'll be wanting to show what he's got. I think they've got Bay of Plenty first up, if I remember rightly. But
for the John Drake boot.
Exactly, for the John Drake, my old mate.
Yeah,
your old mate
absolutely.
Too,
and I know it means a lot. The Bay of Plenty guys, you know, under Richard Watt this year, they're getting well prepped up. This is going to be a good, you know, note to start on. What I mean, I love this time of year. I love the NPC. What I really am looking forward to is this year, some of the unions, and it's partly because of the FIFA World Cup, are actually taking games to smaller venues. Now, Auckland, I know, for example, the Waikato game is going to be played at Bell Park in Pakuranga, and they're calling it the Backyard Blitz. They're going to have the food trucks there. They're going to try and create a festival sort of atmosphere there. I know also...
Onewa Domain.
Onewa Domain, just like the good old days. Hey, the Battle of Onewa.
Where there was intention and some of the stuff.
There was plenty of intent that day. And I think Wellington...
But for me,
Hut Rec,
just to jump in, TJ, for me, that's the future of NPC.
Yeah, I think...
Back to the community, food trucks. Communities wanting to go out, knowing your local players. For me, that's it.
It's been brought about by...
counties.
Counties, we've got Hoskins come back, so he's a big plus for the boys. And I mean, he'll bring his experience, and I popped down there a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and they're prepping really well. They went well in the Chiefs Cup there, and got up against Harbour on the weekend. So it doesn't stand for much, but I think they're building quite nicely.
There's some really strong players in this competition. I mean, you have to look at Taranaki. Stephen Perofeta's in the mix, Peter Gus Sawakula his last season, and players coming back from overseas. Luke Romano's out of retirement. Ryan Crotty signed for Canterbury. How did this all happen?
Yeah, it's Luke Romano.
Luke Romano, he said that was it. He was done. He's back.
Keeps on keeping on, doesn't he? But at the other end of the scale too, and the beauty of having these guys, you know, guys who come back from overseas or a Luke Romano, is that there are going to be new faces stepping up to this level. It's still a really, really important step along the way, and I think that's the thing that always excites me about the NPC.
Any positions, any Super Rugby spots left, or they fill those before the end?
Well, no, there's always...
There'll be something going on.
Yeah.
We know, TJ, Auckland, Counties, Manukau. Are you Tasman or North Harbour? Where do your allegiances actually lie?
Sounded like he was going down the bay just for a minute there.
Bay of Plenty.
Yeah.
Hey?
My wife's definitely...
Which one is it? We've got 10
look,
seconds.
I'm Tasman.
Oh, Tasman, okay, so you're a fins up.
Fins
there
up.
he is. NBC, 5 days' time, All Blacks announcement in 7 days, and the next All Blacks test in Dunedin next Saturday. We'll see you there.